or listen to more people talk about social discovery. But obviously, you want to listen to more people talk about social discovery, particularly this ridiculously large panel that is everyone who's ever been a reporter in Silicon Valley, from what I can tell. So let's go down the line, and I want everyone to say the most interesting thing you heard today and the thing that you heard that you think is total bullshit.
Oh, wow. Well, considering I've only been here for my panel now and the one before it, I actually liked the idea of having more than one primary input signal for sort of what you have to use to recommend to people on a network. So, like, say, like a +1 or a like is not the primary thing to drive that sort of thing. I didn't really hear. I mean, maybe I heard some bullshit, but
No marketing speak. No, come on.
I mean, everyone was plugging their site, so I don't know.
All right, we'll help Mr. Rosoff does better. You're usually happy to call people out.
The thing that I thought was BS is that you still require a website to build a business. You can't build a business based exclusively on mobile apps. I don't think that's true. I think it's been demonstrated that you can, and I think that's actually how.
I think we call it Instagram.
Yeah, exactly, and there are other examples too. So I think that mobile really is absolutely 100% relevant, and if you're desktop focused or desktop only, you're in danger of being left behind. So that's my BS statement.
And what was the most interesting thing you heard?
That Facebook actually talks to people about their mobile plans on a regular basis.
Yeah, no word.
So I thought the most interesting thing today was some of the topics on the panel I had, and it was about trust. So I think social discovery, one of the core aspects is trust. And if you don't have it, if you can't figure out how to get your users to trust each other, trust themselves and say honest things, then social discovery is hard. And I guess on the bullshit meter, all the talk about Facebook succeeding, Facebook failing, I think most things we say about Facebook are bullshit.
Wow, so it's going to neither succeed nor fail?
Pardon?
So it's going to neither succeed nor fail?
No, just more commentary about the commentary.
Got it. Doug?
So I thought an interesting theme of the day was had to do with the sources of recommendations and the sources of discovery. I think we all are realizing that our 200, 300 friends on Facebook are perhaps not the best way to discover some great new camera or some great piece of music that you wouldn't understand. That's a fairly limited circle. So as I was talking with the Pandora CEO about how they're building sort of a music-focused graph, and I think I heard this sort of from the news guys. They're sort of building a news-focused recommendation graph. This idea of kind of building these social graphs beyond your explicit social network on Facebook was one of the interesting themes that I thought applied to a lot of companies today. For the bullshit, and Joe Kennedy's not here anymore, so he can't hear me say this, but the threat from Spotify, I think, is very real for Pandora, and they're downplaying it a lot. They're in talks with labels about basically building a similar replica based on similar licensing, allow them to stream, a radio station much like Pandora for a lower cost. So I think they're downplaying that. I think that threat to Pandora is really real, and he sort of, I'm calling a little bit BS on that.
All right, sound like a lot of BS. Shandy?
Well, the most interesting thing that I heard was when Greg said that you are attracted to people who are as good looking as you. that was definitely the best. And he meant friends, not like romantic partners. So I'm just like evaluating all my friends right now and trying to figure out where I fit in. And then bullshit, I would say that, well, I've only been covering Silicon Valley for a year, so it still sounds like bullshit to my ears because I'm from New York. But this whole idea that nobody thinks about how to make money off of these services, I don't know if they really are or are not thinking about it, but what I do know is that I think it's sort of irresponsible. If you're really thinking about building a company for the long term, which is what everybody says, then you have to think about how to make money off your product. Because if you're not, then all you're thinking about is building up a user base so you can sell it to somebody else. And that's how you're going to make money, and that's going to be your exit. So to me, when people say, I'm not thinking about making money because I'm only thinking about the long term, well, what that really says to me then is you're actually not thinking about the long term. You're thinking about how to make your money through an exit. So that's where I call bullshit.
Right on.
She's not even drunk yet. Dylan.
Most interesting fact for me was the comment from Zappos that they get, I think, $33 every time somebody tweets an order, and they only get 75 cents net when somebody shares it on Pinterest. And yet, people are sharing orders on Pinterest far, far more. Like, they turned it on, and the same day, like, they already had more people sharing their orders through Pinterest than through Twitter and Facebook combined. So there's some interesting kind of squaring of popularity versus revenue to happen there, and I don't think anybody's figured that out yet. On the bullshit side, I don't know if this is actually a point of BS, but I think there's there's a lot of talk about how important it is to be on mobile, and yet there was a comment on the Rising Stars panel, I think it was, where somebody said that the reason that they have a website is so they can make money. Because they aren't getting any revenue from mobile, and this is a huge, huge issue for the industry, which is that, we see this in the media industry too, like the move from print to online saw a fall off in CPMs of about tenfold, 1/10 of what they used to be. They're going to 1/10 of the online revenues in mobile, and that's not just advertising, but it's all kinds of marketing, it raises all kinds of marketing and retailing issues. Just really hard to make money off of mobile right now, even though everybody seems to believe it's the future.
But don't you think that depends on what you're doing on mobile? I mean, for a lot of people, it's sort of this digital do-over where you can charge for content again, you can charge for things again. I mean, we just released an ebook, wouldn't have been possible without e-readers. No one would have paid, $3.99 for, essentially a 20,000-word blog post, but they did.
But how much revenue did Instagram generate?
Well, but I mean, to Shandi's point, they weren't trying to generate revenue. I mean, I think it depends on what you're selling. I mean, if you're selling paid apps, there's real revenue in that. If you're, content provider, people are paying for content once again. I mean, I think it's industry specific, don't you think?
Well, it's related to advertising. I think advertising is the one thing that really hasn't taken off on mobile, and no one can seem to really figure it out.
I think there are a few exceptions, too, in the app world where a few really successful games or a few really successful apps have made a lot of money from selling the apps, but most are not making their money from app sales.
I guess I hope that mobile comes up with something more innovative than just ads. I mean, I kind of like that ads aren't taking off and people have to figure out other ways to make money. Like, I think if we move everything onto yet another platform and just say, we'll get a lot of eyeballs and make it up in advertising, and it's like even more fractions of a penny, per eyeball, like, I think that at least the content industry is doomed, and I would think a lot of others
That is
are.
BS, I agree.
All right, Mr. Schwartz.
I think it was Matt's panel, a forward-thinking comment from Grant about what might happen in terms of social media use. He looked at two extremes, the highlight extreme where people would dive into it and almost drown in the data. And on the other side, those who might run away or go away. So it might be one extreme or the other. So I think there's something to that. In terms of bullshit, I agree with what Doug and Shandy said. What you said in particular does irritate the hell out of me because it's like they're playing a bluff. I mean, it's kind of like a showdown. Let's see how far we can push this. And it's so transparent, actually, after you hear it. You've only heard it for a year. I've heard it for like 20 years. So, and in terms of third bullshit, it's probably something I said during our panel, but I can't remember which one it was.
You just brought up a point that you didn't remember.
Probably.
Are
It's
you
kind of like
drunk?
it's like being on press here. He's kind of vamp it, right? And see what happens.
All right.
I think for me, the idea of highlight as a sixth sense is really interesting. That app still feels like a long shot to me, but if they crack that, that's Google Glass without the dorky glasses, right? You walk into a room, you know who's around you. I could use that 10 times a day. So I think that's really interesting, and I hope they figure it out. In terms of bullshit, I think it's bullshit to store your users' meeting notes on your servers, and then when asked why, say, we can't talk about it, please refer to our Twitter feed for updates. That's bullshit.
That dude left, right? He's
Well,
not here.
I can't follow any of those. No, I'll just give you two things from the news discovery panel. The most interesting being that Andy, our Facebook guy, I don't think he's in the room anymore, I think he said the only person in his office at Facebook who still reads newspapers. Interesting and a little disturbing. And the BS on that panel, I think, was the fact that none of those guys would explicitly say that they're kind of the new kingmakers of journalism. the news discovery apps, Facebook, Twitter, all of that. I think they really are, the ways in which we're going to discover news in the future, and I think that they haven't quite realized this yet. At least they're not saying so explicitly, but I think they're going to have to recognize it in the next few years.
And do you think it's a good trend or a bad trend?
Well, is it better or worse than 3 broadcast networks deciding what's news? Is it better or worse than the New York Times deciding what's news? I don't know. I mean, maybe it's better. I hope it's better. I hope we're all very smart about it. I think it's got a lot to do with the decisions that are made by the people in this room.
Mm-hmm. All right, great. I think there's allegedly some audience questions coming, but until those do, let's just continue to insult people. So I'm curious, social discovery is, again, like one of these buzzwords, and, like people like John and I have been here a very long time, there's always one, and they get intolerable quickly. But, they always do flick to something actually interesting that's happening, as much noise as there is around it. So, I don't necessarily want to go down the row again, just because that gets formulaic, but I'm curious if anyone to throw out anyone that you think is an overhyped player in social discovery, and anyone that you think is an underhyped player. Like, is there a company that we're not think you want to say something?
I do. I want to say first off that I think social discovery is underhyped. I think everybody does it, but we haven't focused on it. So I'm glad that we're all here today to kind of look at it. And is it a market? Is it a feature? Like, what really is it? Is it a product, technology? How's it all going to be solved in the future? I think there's a lot of open questions. I think a lot of the panelists today were really interesting, and they're all sort of attempting to do it, but the fact is that most are failing at it. Is that a symptom of the social network itself? Is that a symptom of how Facebook connects people together? So I'm kind of posing more questions than I am answers, but I think that there's a lot of unanswered questions out there.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that the biggest question that's unanswered is how much do people really want to socialize through technology with people they don't know? And that is still a curiosity to me. Like, I haven't, Facebook obviously proved to us that the people you do want to socialize with the most are the people that you actually know, who are actually your friends in real life. And I think it's still a question whether on the same level we will ever use discovery. People were talking a lot about airtime and sort of, going on it and kind of being like, what do we do now? And it reminds me of like when I was in like 9th grade and we had chat rooms. And you would go on and talk to random strangers, and then very quickly you're kind of like, this is really weird. Why am I doing this? So,
I really want to know what you thought of airtime, or what you think of it. You're about the only person who hasn't discussed it. I know you could probably have some sort of comment.
I mean, I'm not the demographic. I am not the demographic, and it's very, there obviously is some heat around it. There's heat around chat roulette, but I wouldn't use it. I think video is very hard to crack. And I think we've seen over and over again companies who started trying to do stuff around video, even Seismic like 8 pivots ago. I mean, there's so many people who try to do stuff around video, and video just, it just doesn't work. I mean, we're still experimenting with it as a blog. I've worked at 3 different media companies that experimented with it. It's just, people want to be able to scan stuff. People like the asynchronous aspect.
Do people really want to look at themselves on a computer screen and see how they react to some total stranger on the other side of the screen? That's something I don't want to look at my...
I think teenagers always want to look at themselves.
Yeah.
So I think
those
demographic.
over 25, though, or over 30, do they really want to do that?
I think the fear is that it becomes another Formspring. Something that, Formspring took off even quicker than Pinterest did, was bigger than Pinterest, and, now it's a ghost town because it was that fickle audience that wants this itch scratched of connection and self-expression and all of this, but they flit to different audiences, places to do that the same way they flit to different vampire movies or Forever 21 Zara stores. I think if that's their target market, then it's concerning. If there's just a lot of 25-year-old and 30-year-olds out there who are just very unlike me and want to do it, then I don't know.
I think it's too soon to say about airtime, but I think they actually are onto something in that they address a very specific shortcoming of Facebook, which was discussed earlier today, which is that it's very hard to discover new people in Facebook. And they provide a layer for doing that, and they very cleverly kind of latch into your interests in Facebook and kind of your constellation of interests, so they can start to match people up, or you can see in that little interface while you're gazing at your own visage, you can see what what somebody else is interested in and find points of connection. I think that's potentially really powerful.
I think to piggyback on that, I think without commenting on whether or not it will succeed, I think Facebook really wants something like this to succeed because they've, one of the biggest features for Facebook that doesn't get a lot of hype is the people you may know. That really kind of got the viral adoption of Facebook to spread really quickly, a few years ago. They've gradually been trying to kind of roll back the privacy layers and get people to, share with friends of friends and friends of friends of friends. Something like this that could help kind of expand someone's network to, other networks, and doing that through a third-party application. I think Facebook, really needs that and really wants to widen their data and widen their kind of people you may know. But to Shandy's point, I don't know if people want to do that. I don't know if people want to, interact with strangers.
I think the issue that I have with airtime is sort of the issue I had with like Sonar, who was a runner-up for Disrupt, and even Highlight to a degree. It's like there's people who want people to connect with them, and there's people who don't want people to connect with them. And like I always judge like which conferences that I want to go to as a reporter by, are there more people I want to talk to at this conference than want to talk to me at this conference? Because if it's the reverse, it's not a conference I want to be at. Because generally I like talking to almost anyone doing something remotely interesting. And if there's more people wanting to talk to me than I want to talk to, then like that's horrific. I think it's sort of the same thing if you're an attractive woman in a bar. You don't want an app to make everyone know everything going on about you. But, the lonely nerd at the end of the bar probably does want that app. So, I think airtime's a little bit the same way. And it's like, I hate to put everything in like high school terms, but I think there's two kinds of people in the world. And there's kinds of people who, want everyone to be discovering them. And there's kinds of people who have shit going on and don't have time for it.
No, I agree. I think there's that real bifurcation. There's going to be this real bifurcation. And at a certain point, it's going to become cool not to be connected. And that'll be a small group of people just like, wait a minute, I don't need that. Paul Saffo was talking to me about
this.
And
I think it was smart that they had all the celebrities at their launch because they want it to look cool. Both the Seans are very smart. They know it needs to look cool. But, if it gets out there and it's not, it's going to kill it. Because, you only want to meet people in a room of cool people.
Something similar to what Greg said earlier is there's more people in the world, how do you say it? More people in the world have too much time.
Most people in the world are time rich.
Are time rich as opposed to time poor.
The average American watches 20 hours of TV a week.
So, I think that this is not exactly the bifurcation you're saying, but I think those people are, there's a big market for people who, have
Sarah,
lots of time on their hands.
Your comment makes me really sad. Like, is it only lonely nerds who need to hook up with?
No, not only
like
lonely
some of us
nerds.
are not attractive women, so we need a little help here.
So I want to give an example.
I can hook you up with some women, Dylan, if that's where this is driving at.
I want to give an example, and this plays into your underhyped app question, but also what we've just been talking about, which is Grindr. If you're a straight person, you might not be familiar with Grindr. If you're a gay person, it's where you had your last date. These are not all lonely nerds on Grindr. These are just guys who want to meet other guys, and it is an app that.
But don't you think affinity networks are different?
Well, how do you mean?
Well, if you're, I think JDate is a great example of this. I think if you're, you self-identify in a certain group, and, I don't think Grindr's all gay people. I think it's a very certain, it's not all, do you know how many gay people are in the world?
All the guys that I've met from Grindr have been gay.
Meaning not all gay people in the world are on Grindr. It's a very certain subset of gay people who are on Grindr. I don't think the 80-year-old man in a committed relationship is on Grindr.
This explains why I'm not finding any women on Grindr.
Yeah, you're doing it wrong. But I think if it's something where it's, you're already trying to this is one reason why the early days of Facebook were great, because it was confined to just your college, or, so different social networks or dating sites that are confined to just your religion, or, just the group that you socially identify with. I think that's a little different than something that's just thrown open to the public.
Right. All I'm saying is that there's absolutely an opportunity for social discovery apps that are going to help you meet new people, and it's not just lonely nerds.
Right. Wow, a lot of anger from the lonely nerds on this panel. All right. Here's Here's a question from Twitter. That's not very nice that you didn't put like hashtags or usernames. They probably would like to hear themselves shouted out if they're watching. Would any of you pay outright for an app to make new friends? Does that take lonely nerds to an uncomfortable level for you?
I think there is such a thing as new friend fatigue, and I see it more and more. I hear about it more and more. I think that, and I don't think it's necessarily two types of people. I don't think it's an introvert extrovert thing. I think that you just hit a certain point in your life, maybe in your mid-30s, or maybe when you get married or whatever, where you just don't want any more new friends, or they have to hit a really high bar.
I totally agree. I don't have time to see the friends that I have.
Right? Yeah, I would pay for an app that helps me to get to know my current friends better.
What if it was quality? I mean,
Yeah,
let's pay $1 and you get to meet someone that you really actually will enjoy meeting.
Or there's some sort of exclusivity to it, right? And then people will pay a lot of money if it's a carefully screened group of people that we know you're all going to be in some sort of
I mean, that's kind of online
subclub.
dating.
What if you
People
do-
pay
yeah,
for
there are-
online dating. It's
there
the
are
same
dating
thing.
apps. Yeah.
It's a conference model too, actually. I mean, people pay to come to conferences like this because they know they're going to meet people, not just to hear scintillating insights from us, but
Mostly that.
for all of mostly that. But there's also a little bit of like meeting other people, right?
Uh-huh. What do you think, Shonda? You're giving me a
Oh,
disapproving
no.
look or something.
I don't really like meeting new people. I mean, it's my job.
Yeah,
so
good
it's
business
like,
to be in.
it's what I do all day. So when I don't have to meet new people, I'm really happy.
So you're not in the category of paying for.
I would be in the not paying for category.
Would you
I'd
pay
pay
not?
for it if it was something that I was very specifically looking for, a certain kind of interest that was very narrow, and it was definitely qualified. Think about paying for qualified leads. That way.
But I think if we're really talking about friendship, like, when you start introducing money into it, doesn't it get a little creepy?
Yes.
Cover charge to get into the club where all the cool people are. Right.
I think creepiness, actually, that's a really good point to bring up. And that's something that sort of plagued all of our panels a little bit, especially my panel, because I had all this location stuff. And I think, I'll tell a story, but I won't tell who the person was who told this to me. But I was moving to San Francisco from New York, and I was talking to somebody at a social discovery network, and I said, oh, I'm moving to San Francisco. Maybe I should go on the social discovery network. And they said, no. Because it was creepy people. And so they didn't think that I should go on it. I think that is definitely a part of also when you say people who are, time poor, time rich. I mean, you want to be with the people who are time poor. It's like what you say. I mean, I guess I agree with you on the creepy or whatever, the nerdy guy in the corner. I mean, you want to.
It's not just nerds, to be clear. I think
Right.
I think it's
It's
everyone. I think it's
also,
when you come to Silicon Valley and you don't know
stupid
anyone.
people.
You want to meet everybody.
Maybe we should
but-
pay to find out where we should stay away from.
So people will pay for things if they work, generally. That's a general principle of business. And I think no one has figured out an algorithm to say this person and this person are similar and they'll be friends. I think Jeff Cook from Meet Me was saying interest-based does not necessarily correspond with people becoming friends. People do pay for dating services and, they have varying degrees of success, but I don't think anyone's cracked the nut on, these two people are going to be friends, you should go hang out. And I don't think Airtime has quite figured that out yet, but, we'll see.
I don't know. I hope people don't crack the nut on that. I don't know. I'm old-fashioned, but I'm a firm believer that an algorithm can't solve everything.
It's a little brave
I
world.
also am not a big believer in clout for the same reason. I think that Joe Fernandez is a great CEO, and I admire what they're trying to do, and I can totally see why brands are using them. But, ultimately, I just don't think you can boil down someone's influence to a score. I just think there's aspects of real life that as we try to put everything social into the web, they don't correlate. And I don't know. I mean, I have a 9-month-old, and if he's, 5 or 6 and he's meeting his friends through an algorithm on the web and not on the playground, I think that'd be pretty depressing.
Yes.
That's a downer. Okay. So this one is from @Anbot, if I'm pronouncing that right. There she is, yay. She asked the last question too, but it's just @Anbot Hour. She'll let her ask another one. What creeps you out? Oh, we already asked. What creeps you out about social discovery? We kind of said that. Anyone else find something creepy about it?
Maybe we're bad examples for this because we're press, but it disturbs me when someone knows what I look like, and when I'm showing up and someone knows what my face looks like and is like, oh, hey, Mike, you know, I mean, it's like, it's flattering on the one hand, and it might serve a purpose in my job, right? So like I can have people come look for me, but at the same time, there's something off-putting about it, you know? I feel like I have to seek you out before I want you to know what I look like. I don't know.
Well, I think it's interesting that you're saying that as press, because as press, you know, you're a little bit more used to it and you expect it. What if people start going on these things and they're not really aware of what that feels like, and when someone does come up to them? I mean, I think there's a lot of unseen creepy stuff. I mean, look, but I'm a Luddite. I was not even a Foursquare fan because I don't want people to know where I am, because they'll come up and pitch me.
I think the creepiest thing, I don't know if you guys have got this yet, is Facebook ads targeted at you saying, please cover my startup. And it's there on your Facebook page. You haven't seen that? Oh, this is coming. Trust me. Yeah, and sometimes they get your name wrong. And like,
Have they not heard of like emails?
You know, I guess maybe they tried 3 or 4 emails and then they bought a Facebook ad. I don't know.
Just one more social ad that didn't work on Facebook.
Exactly.
Well, I think that I've always thought Gmail was a little creepy, how they serve you up ads based on your conversations, but they've crossed that line into just pissing me off in the last week because they keep serving me up weight loss ads. I'm like, really? Do you have enough data to know I'm a woman who just had a baby? Maybe don't serve this up. Okay, 2 more questions here. This is from, I don't know how I'm supposed to say this, Ebooz, E-B-O-O-7. That's hard. Maybe I'm regretting this Twitter handle thing. Why do you think e-commerce hasn't worked out well on Facebook, and what does that teach us about doing social on other e-commerce sites? I mean, you, Dylan brought up Pinterest. I think that's a big question of, is all this aspirational commerce on Pinterest actually going to translate into revenues in any way?
For me, it feels like it fits in very naturally into Pinterest, because the whole point of Pinterest is like, look at this cool stuff. I want this, or I have this, or I might want this, and you know, you might want it too. So that seems like that dovetails very naturally. Whereas Facebook is all about who was my friend, and you know, can I find my friend in high school, and do I have a better job than him now?
Do you, generally?
Mostly not.
No one on this panel does.
Yeah, this is why I don't like Facebook a whole lot. But also just communicating and staying in touch. I mean, there's sort of like, actually what I do like about Facebook is the ability to stay in kind of ambient contact with people that I used to work with or live with or whatever. And there's really no place for commerce in there. It's like, why would a recommendation to buy something from one of these people mean something to me?
Well, but what about Netflix? What about your friends have just, you know, watched this obscure movie I didn't know about and they liked it? I could see that having relevance, no?
Maybe for some media, but not for, I mean, really, so in Facebook, I mean, the whole idea is you're having a conversation. You're not searching for something. You're not necessarily looking for something. You may be watching a movie, but does that mean you really want to watch it? You know, your friend wants to watch it, and why should you broadcast that? To me, commerce seems like it doesn't have a place inside of a social, intimate conversation. I'm not saying it's not possible that someone couldn't figure out a formula for that, but it doesn't match the interest that you have in what you're doing and why you're there. I mean, you think about what Facebook is. You're there to connect with your friends, your family, and your old friends. And what else do you do there besides that?
There might be some sort of group event planning kind of thing, reservations or group ticket buying, that might make sense. But yeah, in general, you're not there to, it's like going to a party and being pitched on products while you're at the party. It doesn't make any sense.
It works for me on Amazon though, right? Like the bottom of the, because I'm going to Amazon for products, right? And go with the intent to buy, right? And so like I have those little suggestions. People also bought this, and that's where I'm sort of used to it.
I think it depends on what we're talking about. So if you go to a party with your friends and somebody recommends a great book they just read, that might be something you would buy. But if someone's going on and on about some specific type of camera that they just bought, chances are you're not in the market for a camera. So I think there's very specific products that this will work in early on, and ones that will get a lot of attention for. Social commerce on Facebook is failing right now.
I think it has to do with demographic, and I notice all the people saying there's no place for it, all men. And I think that women read fashion magazines in order to look at different items of clothing and know how they can get them and buy them. Like I could see for teenage girls who always want to know what their friends are wearing and very trend-based things, it being possible. Shandi, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that I don't fully understand why they haven't been able to crack this yet. And I think that it probably will happen at some point. You just have to, and maybe through women is the way, because, you know, it doesn't make, I mean, I understand the argument out there. The argument is that, you know, Facebook is whatever the top of the funnel. You're not actually like looking for something specific when you're there. You're just kind of stalking or randomly looking. But, you know, more and more we do. I mean, I have Facebook open all day, so there's plenty of opportunities. If I saw like nice clothing or, you know, I would buy it. I don't see why I wouldn't. It's just obviously the format that it's been pitched to, so, you know, to date hasn't really worked. But I think it should work.
Yeah, we're just conditioned to use Facebook to socialize. I mean, we're conditioned to go to Amazon to shop. We're conditioned to...
But
so
shopping
it's
is
gonna
also
change.
social. And I mean, maybe again, this is a gender thing, but like, you know, women go shopping together. I mean, it's a social activity.
Maybe this is a
Sure,
big...
but the last social ad I saw on Facebook was that a friend I had from high school and haven't talked to since then liked Lowe's Home Improvement. And to me, that's just not actionable. I can't do anything with that. Like, It makes me vaguely more aware that Lowe's exists.
Right.
But beyond that, I don't understand what Lowe's is getting out of selling that to me.
Okay, but if Sarah bought a really great pair of skinny jeans and they were like relatively, well, you know, cheap or something, I'd be like, oh, I want those skinny jeans, and I would buy it.
She would. She follows me on jean purchases all the time.
It'll be interesting to see what Pinterest does in this area, because right now they have kind of the momentum and they have the attention of exactly the audience you're talking about.
I guess my skepticism with Pinterest, and you know, I guess I'm differing from Dylan on this. Maybe I'm just cranky. I think that Pinterest is like, you know, when I was in high school or early college, and I would cut out things that it's like the woman who started like the Bride book when she was a child, and like she doesn't buy any of those things. None of those things ever become the wedding. I think it's like self-identification. I would love this lifestyle. I mean, I could look through a catalog and clip out every way I would decorate a home in the south of France, but I'm never gonna have one. I'm never gonna buy those things. I mean, that's, to me, the big thing we don't know about Pinterest is if, even though we're talking about wanting to own and attain things, if it's this aspirational self-expression, sort of wishful thinking sort of commerce, or this is, you know, the Ziploc bags I'm gonna buy at the store.
Maybe that's why Zappos isn't making very much money from people
That's what
sharing
I would guess,
their
but-
orders on Pinterest. So.
I was going to say on Pinterest, I mean, the main activity you do is you look at things, right? So it sort of piques your visual interest, and hey, and on Facebook you don't. I mean, yes, there are a lot of images there, and you go through, but there's a lot to read as well. So maybe there's an aspect to the imagery of Pinterest versus the textual nature of Facebook.
I also think it goes beyond the aspirational to the intentional, though. If you're on Pinterest and you have a wedding planning notebook, an advertiser could sell to that person. That person is getting very close to making a purchase, and to me, that has some appeal.
All right, I think we have 2 minutes left, so I'll try to get through one or two more questions. Does social discovery rely heavily on people having good intentions?
Well, in the case of the social reader, it relies on people having no intentions whatsoever, right? It's just you click and it's there. So, I mean, I think one of the really weird parts of this space is how intention is getting sucked out of it altogether.
Same for Pandora. I mean, all
Yeah.
you want is, you know, this raw, someone liked or didn't like this song kind of. What about for the more aspects where it's person to person, making friends? Does that worry anybody?
That's like back to the creepiness factor. You know, it's just, you want to be in a place where, I think actually your comparison to the conference, whether there are more people there that you want to speak to versus people who want to speak to you, that's what it's all about. And so, you know, like you say with airtime, I mean, maybe I would go on airtime now because the chance that I'll like end up talking to Mark Zuckerberg could be really, you know, that I'd like. I have a few questions for him. So, you know, that's why you want to use these things, but it's all about the audience that you can get. And so, and I think that's really the point that's coming out of it, is that, you know, you have to kind of figure out, these social discovery networks all have their own vibe to them.
I mean, that's what killed Chat Roulette was the penises. Right?
I think we might be focusing a little too much on the creep factor, because I think, and one of the reasons is we haven't discussed games very much here. And I think that's kind of the way out of the creepiness issue with social discovery. Bill Wynn talked about this briefly, where Farmville was actually a way for people to kind of interact with each other and find new people. And you know, to your point about kids, like algorithms, you know, finding playmates, like my daughter, who's 11, plays an online multiplayer game, And she's made tons of friends through that. Now, they're all virtual friends, and it's very safe and all, but you know, she's made a lot of friends. She's gotten a lot of practice doing interactions, and it's all because it's within a game. So back to the point of like intentionality, I think, you know, all of these social discovery networks, and it's really clear in games, have to be engineered in a way that it's fun and it's in your self-interest to do things, and then they kind of mine that data to make connections. And I don't think they depend on
I think
good
it's a good
intentions.
point. I think it's a good point. So social discovery is so crowded, asks Sherman. I think that's maybe an 8 in there. How should companies stand out? I mean, you guys get pitched on this stuff all the time. Now that there's been a conference called this, you're going to get even more pitches that just say gamification, big data, social discovery. So what makes it stand out for you?
If it doesn't use any of those buzzwords. Seriously, if it's a new idea, if it's something bold and radical, and I can picture myself writing about it and not just another Me Too.
And I think what you're saying is that if it's something that doesn't depend on a trend, something that's just interesting in its own right.
Yeah, if it's not like an X for Y, right? Like insert this for that.
Or just solve a real problem. That's always my filter, is like, is this a problem that I've had or somebody I know has had? Always makes it super interesting to me.
Anyone else? All right. Well, I'm getting like 0 minutes left, so I think we should wrap up. But big hand of applause for your moderators all day.
And in closing, the lost and found is at the registration desk. So if you've lost something and you want to find it, that's where you should go. I want to thank Casey in particular for being such a trooper all day and emceeing the hell out of this bad boy. And all our speakers, in particular the guys up here and gals up here on this panel who really, really helped in making this happen. You guys were such a big part of it, as were all of you for being here. I want to thank Meet Me, Schemer, and Tagged for being huge sponsors and huge supporters of the event. Our volunteers, the Go Lightly team, the amazing ladies at Kennedy Events. If you need to throw an event in 4 months, even though they don't tell them I told you 4 months, you can do it with them. And lastly, the team that I get to work with every day. I'm honored and I'm stoked. Let's go drink.